The number one mistake men over 50 make every night that wrecks their prostate. I want to start with a question that most men over 50 would answer the same way. What time do you typically sit down after dinner? For most men, the answer is somewhere between 6 and 7 in the evening. You finish your meal, move to the couch or the recliner, turn on something to watch, and settle in. Maybe you have a drink, maybe a snack. You sit there for 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours until it is time for bed. Then you lie down. Within 90 minutes you are awake. Bathroom, back to bed. 2 hours later, awake again, bathroom. Sometimes a third time before morning. You wake up exhausted. You blame your prostate. You blame your age. You tell yourself this is just what life looks like now. But here is what nobody told you. The reason you are waking up at night has almost nothing to do with your prostate directly. It has everything to do with what you are doing in those 3 hours between dinner and bed. The specific mistake you are making during that window is the single most common and most damaging thing I see men over 50 doing to their prostate health night after night, year after year, without any awareness that it is happening. I am Dr. John Carter. I am a urologist, and today I am going to explain exactly what that mistake is, why it is damaging your prostate at the cellular level, and precisely what to do instead. The mistake: prolonged sedentary sitting in the evening, followed immediately by lying down. The mistake is not simply sitting. The mistake is the specific pattern of prolonged sedentary sitting for 2 to 4 hours in the evening, during the period of maximum daily fluid accumulation, followed without interruption by lying down to sleep. This pattern creates a biological chain reaction. Let me walk you through it step by step. Step 1. Fluid accumulates in your lower legs throughout the day. From the moment you wake up and stand, gravity pulls fluid downward into your lower extremities continuously. In a young, healthy vascular system, this fluid is efficiently and continuously returned to circulation. The leg muscles, contracting with every step, compress deep veins and push venous blood upward. The venous valves prevent backflow. After 50, this system becomes progressively less efficient. Venous valve function declines. Vessel wall elasticity diminishes. The leg muscles provide less pumping action, particularly in men who spend significant time sitting. Fluid seeps from the capillaries into surrounding tissue and pools there. By the end of a typical day, the average man over 50 has accumulated between 500 milliliters and 1.5 liters of fluid in the soft tissue of his calves and ankles. Not obviously visible swelling in most cases, perhaps just a mild sock mark, but it is there, and your kidneys cannot see it because it is not in the circulation, it is in the tissue. Step 2. The evening sitting period accelerates and compounds the accumulation. When you sit down after dinner and remain seated for 2 to 4 hours, the leg muscles become completely inactive. The musculovenous pump stops. Fluid that had been slowly clearing during the day now accumulates without any opposing mechanism. Prolonged sitting with legs dependent maximizes gravitational pull on lower extremity fluid. Venous pressure in the lower leg veins is at its highest in this position. Capillary pressure rises. Fluid leaks into surrounding tissue at an accelerated rate. The dinner meal compounds this further. If your evening meal contained the typical hidden sodium of a modern diet, processed meats, commercial sauces, restaurant food, that sodium drives additional fluid retention through osmotic pressure. Your body retains water to dilute the sodium. That retained water distributes into the already accumulating fluid in your lower legs. If you had alcohol with dinner or afterward, add another layer. Alcohol suppresses antidiuretic hormone, the hormone telling the kidneys to reduce urine production during the evening. With antidiuretic hormone suppressed, the kidneys continue producing urine at near daytime rates as you prepare for sleep. By the time you lie down, after 2 to 4 hours of sedentary post-dinner sitting, you may have accumulated a liter or more of fluid in your lower leg tissue. Your kidneys have seen none of it because it has been sitting in the tissue, not the circulation. Step 3. You lie down. The damage begins. When your body becomes horizontal, the gravitational gradient holding fluid in your lower legs disappears. That accumulated fluid begins reabsorbing from the tissue back into the venous circulation. Over the first 60 to 90 minutes of lying flat, it moves from your leg tissue into your bloodstream and flows toward your heart. The right atrium, receiving this unexpected additional volume, distends and releases a hormone called atrial natriuretic peptide, or ANP. ANP signals the kidneys urgently, too much fluid, process it immediately. The kidneys shift into accelerated filtration mode. Your bladder fills rapidly with fluid that has nothing to do with what you drank in the past several hours. And you wake up at 1 in the morning with a full bladder. You go to the bathroom, return to bed. But the fluid from your legs has not finished mobilizing. Another wave completes its redistribution. 2 hours later, the bladder is full again. Trip number 2. This is why the man who stopped drinking at 6 in the evening is still waking at 2 and 4 in the morning. He is not processing fluid he consumed in the evening. He is processing fluid that accumulated in his legs all day and during the evening sitting period, now draining systematically through his kidneys. The prostate damage you cannot see. This nightly pattern is specifically and progressively damaging the prostate through mechanisms that compound silently over years. The first mechanism is hormonal disruption from chronic sleep fragmentation. Each nighttime bathroom interruption disrupts whatever sleep stage you are in. If you are woken from deep, slow-wave sleep, when the majority of daily testosterone production occurs, you interrupt the hormonal repair process the prostate depends on. Testosterone plays a regulatory role in the prostate that helps maintain normal cell behavior and inhibits the inflammatory signaling driving BPH progression. Chronic sleep fragmentation progressively reduces total time in restorative deep sleep stages. The downstream effect is lower testosterone production, higher cortisol levels, and a hormonal environment measurably more conducive to prostatic cell proliferation. A study examining the relationship between sleep quality and BPH severity found that men who consistently slept fewer than 6 hours per night had significantly higher international prostate symptom scores than men sleeping 7 to 8 hours. Poor sleep was an independent predictor of prostate disease severity after controlling for age, BMI, and other confounders. The second mechanism is elevated nocturnal cortisol. Being repeatedly woken from sleep is a physical stressor. Each awakening produces a brief cortisol pulse. In a man waking 3 or 4 times per night, these pulses occur multiple times during the period when cortisol should be at its lowest. Chronically elevated nocturnal cortisol suppresses testosterone production, increases insulin resistance and IGF-1 elevation driving prostatic cell proliferation, and maintains sympathetic nervous system activation that worsens urethral obstruction through alpha receptor tone in prostatic smooth muscle. The third mechanism is direct prostatic hypoxia from poor sleep. Sleep fragmentation is associated with episodic oxygen desaturations. In men waking repeatedly, these events accumulate. Prostatic tissue receiving transiently reduced oxygen content multiple times per night experiences repeated brief hypoxic episodes. Hypoxia in prostatic tissue activates HIF-1 alpha, initiating the adaptive growth response. A man waking 4 times per night is experiencing 4 additional hypoxic triggers to prostatic growth compared to a man who sleeps through. The fourth mechanism is progressive bladder wall damage. When the bladder is repeatedly filled to capacity and voided through the night over years, the compensatory changes in the bladder wall compound the urinary obstructive effects of the enlarging prostate. The detrusor muscle thickens, bladder compliance reduces, the urgency threshold lowers. These changes are progressive and accumulating. Why this mistake is almost universal and almost never identified. The reason this evening pattern is so common and so rarely identified as the problem is invisibility and normalization. It is invisible because the fluid accumulation in the lower legs is not obvious. Men do not connect the sock mark on their calf to the bathroom trip at 2 in the morning. The causal chain from evening sitting to nocturnal redistribution, to bladder filling, to sleep disruption, to prostate consequences spans hours and involves mechanisms that are not intuitively connected. And it is normalized because the urinary symptoms of BPH are so common in men over 50 that the entire clinical framework treats them as an expected feature of aging. Men are told their prostate is enlarged. They are given medication. Nobody asks what they are doing in the 3 hours before bed. The medication addresses the symptom. The evening pattern continues producing it. The complete replacement habit. Replacement action 1. The post-dinner walk. Begin within 15 minutes of finishing your meal. This is the most important single change, and it operates on multiple mechanisms simultaneously. Walking within 15 minutes of dinner activates the musculovenous pump of the lower legs before the post-dinner accumulation can establish itself. Contracting calf muscles compress deep venous and lymphatic vessels, pushing accumulated tissue fluid upward toward the heart while you are still awake. The resulting urinary output occurs during the evening rather than at 2 in the morning. It also intercepts the post-dinner glucose and insulin surge that drives IGF-1 elevation and the inflammatory signaling promoting prostatic cell proliferation. Large muscle groups activated by walking take up glucose from the bloodstream through an insulin-independent mechanism, blunting the glucose peak before it produces the maximal hormonal response. 15 to 20 minutes at a comfortable conversational pace. Around the block. Around the house if the weather is not cooperating. Within 15 minutes of finishing dinner. Every evening. Non-negotiable. Replacement action 2. Movement breaks during the evening. Every 45 to 60 minutes. After the post-dinner walk, the evening sitting period is not inherently problematic if interrupted regularly. The problem is unbroken sitting for 2 to 4 hours. Every 45 to 60 minutes, stand up and perform 3 to 5 minutes of calf pumping, brief walking, or heel raises. Any lower body movement that engages the calf muscles and restores brief musculovenous pump activity. Set a recurring timer. When it activates, stand and move for 3 minutes. Return to whatever you were doing. These brief breaks prevent continuous accumulation of tissue fluid during the sedentary evening period. They need to be consistent rather than vigorous. Replacement action 3. The leg elevation protocol. 60 minutes before bed, 1 hour before your intended sleep time, lie down and elevate your legs above the level of your heart, against the back of the sofa, against the wall, on a firm stack of pillows, heels higher than hips, hips at or above heart level. Stay in this position for 25 to 30 minutes. During those minutes, gravity works in the direction of fluid return. Tissue fluid in your lower legs drains back into venous circulation. The kidneys process it. Your bladder fills, and you are still awake on your sofa. 30 to 40 minutes after completing the elevation, you will feel the need to urinate. Go. The void you produce, typically 300 to 400 milliliters of pale dilute urine, is the fluid that would otherwise have filled your bladder at 1:30 in the morning. You have processed it consciously. On your schedule, before sleep, during the elevation, perform 2 amplifying practices. Ankle circles and pumps. 20 slow ankle circles in each direction, then 20 ankle pumps. These activate the deep venous and lymphatic vessels of the calf through muscular compression, accelerating fluid return during the elevation window. Diaphragmatic breathing. Both hands flat on your abdomen. Inhale slowly through the nose for 4 counts with belly rising. Exhale slowly through the mouth for 6 to 8 counts. 10 minutes of this pattern activates the thoracic duct, the main lymphatic drainage channel, which is mechanically pumped by diaphragmatic movement. Every slow, deep breath simultaneously drains peripheral tissue fluid and reduces the sympathetic tone, contributing to prostatic smooth muscle tension. Replacement action 4. The dietary adjustments that work with the protocol. Remove hidden sodium from your evening meal. Every gram of excess sodium at dinner causes your body to retain approximately 4 cups of water. That retained water contributes directly to the overnight fluid redistribution reservoir. The biggest hidden sodium sources at dinner are processed meats, commercial sauces and condiments, canned goods, and restaurant food. Remove alcohol from the evening entirely. Even one drink suppresses antidiuretic hormone and produces a 30 to 40% increase in nocturnal urine output that counteracts every other intervention in this protocol. The mechanism is hormonal, not volumetric. The only solution is not having alcohol in the evening. Remove refined carbohydrates from dinner. The insulin surge following a high glycemic dinner drives IGF-1 elevation, promoting prostatic cell proliferation through the night. Replace with lower glycemic alternatives and prioritize protein at the evening meal. Stop significant fluid consumption after 6 in the evening. Small sips if genuine thirst demands. No significant volumes that add to the kidney's overnight processing load. Compensate with adequate front-loaded hydration through the morning and afternoon. Replacement action 5. The pelvic floor release before sleep. Almost every man with BPH carries chronic pelvic floor tension from the sustained effort required to initiate and maintain urinary flow against a narrowed urethra day after day. That tension elevates intraprostatic pressure, impairs local prostatic blood circulation, maintains sympathetic activation in the pelvic region, and prevents the bladder from reaching its full functional capacity. In bed, lying flat with knees bent and feet flat on the mattress, release the tension in your buttocks, thighs, and lower abdomen in sequence. Bring attention to the pelvic floor. On each slow exhalation, imagine the pelvic floor dropping downward, releasing and softening. On the inhale, let the breath naturally refill without contracting. On each exhale, drop and release. 15 repetitions. 3 to 4 minutes. For men carrying this tension without awareness, the effect is often a perceptible physical release, a drop in lower pelvic pressure that alters the background sense of urgency they had accepted as normal. The complete evening sequence. Finish dinner. Within 15 minutes, post-dinner walk for 15 to 20 minutes. Return from walk. Set recurring timer for every 45 minutes. Each time it activates, stand and move for 3 minutes. 60 minutes before intended sleep, lie down for leg elevation. 25 to 30 minutes with ankle circles, ankle pumps, and diaphragmatic breathing. Void 30 to 40 minutes after completing the elevation. Remaining 30 minutes before bed, dim lights, remove screens, allow nervous system transition toward parasympathetic state. In bed, perform pelvic floor release sequence, 15 slow breathing cycles with deliberate release on each exhalation. Then sleep. What to expect? In the first 3 to 7 days, reduction in nighttime voiding frequency begins immediately because the fluid redistribution mechanism responds within the first night of proper implementation. Men waking 4 times typically drop to 2. Men waking 3 times drop to 1 or sometimes 0. In weeks 2 through 4, sleep architecture improves. Testosterone production recovers. Cortisol normalizes. The hormonal environment of the prostate begins shifting away from the pro-proliferative state that chronic sleep disruption creates. Between 1 and 3 months, cumulative effects on systemic inflammation and pelvic blood flow produce measurable changes. Men report significant reductions in daytime urgency and frequency. Morning void quality improves noticeably. After 3 to 6 months of consistent implementation, the biological environment of the prostate is fundamentally different from where it was. For some men, this is the first time in years that their prostate disease has stopped progressing. When medical evaluation is still necessary, sudden complete inability to urinate is a urological emergency. Go to the emergency room immediately. Blood in the urine at any time requires prompt medical evaluation. Rapidly worsening symptoms over weeks rather than the gradual progression typical of BPH warrant investigation. Annual PSA testing and digital rectal examination are non-negotiable regardless of how well this protocol is working. If you have implemented this consistently for 8 weeks with no meaningful improvement, a proper urological workup is the appropriate next step. Your implementation starting tonight. The mistake is now clear. Prolonged sedentary sitting after dinner accumulates a reservoir of tissue fluid in your lower legs. Lying down drains that reservoir through your kidneys for 6 to 8 hours while you are trying to sleep. The replacement is equally clear. Move after dinner. Break up the evening sitting. Drain the reservoir deliberately before bed through leg elevation. Address the dietary factors that amplify it. Release the pelvic floor tension before sleep. Tonight, within 15 minutes of finishing dinner, go for a walk. 15 to 20 minutes. That single change, maintained consistently, will begin producing measurable improvements in your nighttime voiding frequency within the first week. Add the leg elevation next. Then the movement breaks. Then the dietary adjustments. Build the protocol layer by layer until the complete sequence is in place. The men who follow this consistently describe waking one morning and realizing they slept through the night, or that they only got up once, near morning, and went right back to sleep. They describe the absence of the familiar midnight bathroom shuffle as something they had forgotten was possible. That experience is available to you. The mistake was never your prostate alone. It was what you were doing every evening without knowing it was destroying your sleep and driving your prostate's continued growth at the same time. Now you know. This is Dr. John Carter. Change your evenings, change your prostate, change your nights. I will see you in the next one.